Back in the days, I was mostly using AngularJS, which is a fantastic framework back in the days, even if it had a lot of limitations, especially on performance. It was very inspiring to me to see what coding for production grade project really looks like.
How was switching from working full-time to doing freelance?
From probably 8 p.m. to 1 to 2 a.m., I was working as a freelancer for either Checkout or we will.
After that, after this two experience working as an intern and a freelance, you start Strapi, which is currently a headless CMS.
That they were based on PHP, and we were front-end developers doing JavaScript all day long. The issue is that traditional CMSs have no API. Of course, you can add an API plugin, but the API is slow, it's not customizable, and that's, by the way, where the names comes from. Bootstrap your API, that's where Strapi comes from.
What are the things that was most challenging during the time of building an open source headless CMS back then in 2016?
And so luckily our university has been quite flexible. Instead of doing internships in companies, they allowed us to do internships on Strapi specifically. Decided to do after our studies was to stop doing freelance work, to stop working as a digital agency, but instead raise money so we could be full-time on the project. A lot of investors were like, okay, so it's free, so you'll never make money. The money on our bank account was minus $30,000. So it's really not a good situation to be in. But we closed that round and we've been able to hire a few people and of course to start paying ourselves just a little bit. Investors to look forward to invest in Strapi instead of Strapi looking for money.
One thing that you mentioned a couple of times that I would love to get your thought about is the Strapi community. What is the Strapi community?
So yes, Strapi was definitely one of the first CMSs that's headless.
There's a lot of hype during, like, I think the COVID for the Jamstack, so a lot of people using this. How was Strapi utilizing this hype?
Jamstack for us was really about putting a word on what we believed in the early days. Like
during COVID, how was Strapi thriving during the COVID time? I would say the most important lesson or the challenges that you faced and learned during this experience.
Okay, well, I could write a book about this, so I'm going to try to keep this list short. So we got amazing logos, big deals, but that also took us a lot of our time. And because we are selling these additional features, we quickly derailed the team from the work we were doing with the community. And instead, we focused on creating differentiators for these enterprise customers.
So this is like one of the things that is hard about the freemium model is sometimes you will be having a problem if you would like to have this feature free for everyone or like for paid user, because if it's free for the user, it will be hard for them to upgrade to a paid plan. The Strapi for the 9 years, what do you think the most satisfying 3 milestone that Strapi hit that you think is worth mentioning? So welcome guys to the Let's Code podcast, a podcast where we interview a software engineer to share their entrepreneurial story. And here we are on season number 9 of season number 2 of the podcast. And we have Pierre, the co-founder and the CEO of Strapi. He will be with us to be able to share his story building Strapi and the other lesson that he learned while building Strapi. So let's catch up after this intro. If you are a Shopify app developer, you already know when you are checking your Shopify partner dashboard account and you just see the install and the revenue. But where is the real data? For example, your monthly recurring revenue, churn rate, retention, the actual number that actually tell you if your app is growing or not. And you think, I just need to set up a Google Analytics account. 3 weeks later, you are looking at custom event, goal funnel, and dashboard that break every time Shopify sneezes. And you and your team should be focusing on building feature and fixing bug instead of becoming a Google Analytics expert. And there is a better way of handling this using the sponsor of today's video, SaaS Insights, built by a Shopify developer who lived this exact nightmare. No complex setup needed or fragile tracking scripts. Just plug it in and instantly get the metric that matter. All in one clean and no BS dashboard. It's like having a growth co-founder who show up every day to just answer your question and never sleep, complain, or eat your snacks. It's affordable for Shopify so owner, fully customizable for your specific needs. Try it for free at saasinside.com. So thank you, Pierre,
thank you for
accepting my invitation. It will be a pleasure hosting you for today's episode. So can you give the audience an introduction about yourself so people will know more about you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Pierre. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Strapi, which is the leading open source headless CMS.
Awesome. So the first question that I usually ask to my guests is, how was your first interaction with computer, especially as a web developer?
Okay, yeah, because I started using computers way before I got some interest in web development. So I think it was just maybe to play some games at home at my parents' place and doing some Word documents and all these kind of things. But my journey into web development really started in 2013. So back in the days, I was studying in a business school, and I was working as a real estate agent. So when I was 19, I was selling houses and apartments, which is very different compared to writing code. But it was a really good experience. And I was with another person in this real estate agency. We started trying to transform this small real estate agency as a network of real estates, working everywhere in the country. And so that's really how I started getting interest in entrepreneurship. That's really how it started. And by doing so, I played a little bit with tools like Photoshop and WordPress and some open source CRMs. And that's really how I got interested in web development to customize these solutions. And I also realized that I really wanted to build my own company. And to do so, I wanted to be able to build my own websites, my own products. And that's why I started learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript back in 2013. So I learned a little bit, and I also understood that I wanted to learn much more about all of this. So I applied to university for the second half of my studies, and that university was much more into computer science because I wanted to build my own stuff. And so when joining this university, that's when I really started working a lot, using JavaScript, building real projects, and I really became passionate about this. And I spent all my days and nights coding, building JavaScript stuff. I did an internship in London in 2014 at checkout.com, which was still a very small startups back in the days. And after this, we had the idea for building Strapi with my two co-founders, who are also students in the same university.
That sounds great. So I think, I got the full picture right now. So that's great. That's really good to know, like the initial, where the initial passion came from. This is like usually why I ask this question, the first of the episode, so we can know more about where this passion for developing websites and building software came from. And this is great to know. And the second question, I think you mentioned that the first intern that you have as a full-time employee, and after that you become an employee at checkout.com, which is, I think, a startup. Can you give us how was working there, if you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So that was in summer 2014, just a year after I started web development. So I was very junior, but very much passionate about web development. Back in the days, I was mostly using AngularJS, which is a fantastic framework back in the days, even if it had a lot of limitations, especially on performance. So when I joined this company as an intern, I was like, wow, okay, they trust me, even if I am junior, and so I really wanted to give my best. And I learned so much from other software engineers doing this internship, because for the first time I was working on a real project, like a complex application because we were working on the dashboard for users where people could see their payments collected, all these kind of things. So it was a very complex application. I learned a lot from other people. It was very inspiring to me to see what coding for production grade project really looks like.
Awesome, that's great. And the second thing that you work on is you have been after leaving checkout.com, you have been working as a freelancer. So I think you have been working with a company called We Will in San Diego, California, in the US. And how was switching from working full time to doing freelance? How was the experience switching?
Yeah, it's a good question. So as mentioned before, checkout.com was for an internship. So I did a 3 or 4 months internship at Checkout. And then I continued with them as a freelancer because they needed some help. So offered to hire me, but I really wanted to build my own company. So I declined, but I continued working with them. And I actually went back to university after this internship because it was not the end of my studies. So I continued studying, but I needed to make some money. So that's why I continued with checkout.com as a freelancer and with We Will also as a freelancer. So I was working remotely with them. And so during the day, I was studying and with my 2 co-founders, that's also when we started working on Strapi. And during the night, from probably 8 p.m. to 1 to 2 a.m., I was working as a freelancer for either Checkout or We Will. So it was a very intense part of my life from a work point of view because on top of the studies, I had to work as a freelancer. But it was also very rewarding to see that we could build real stuff, like real projects. And I think I've learned even more from this project than I was learning from university.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, that's great. And also I would like to correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned that you have been going to the university and you study computer science. That's correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, yeah, for the second half of my studies, yes, that was computer science.
Okay. Sounds good. And I think after this 2 experience working as an intern and a freelance, you start Strapi, which is currently a headless CMS to be able to build the backbone of your our website for the content management. Can you give us more insight and the backstory of how Strapi was founded?
Yeah, sure. So we created Strapi. So when I say we, it's my 2 co-founders and I, because we were students, we were working as freelance developers, and to build the projects for our clients, we've used traditional content management systems. There were a few limitations with these services. One of them is that they were based on PHP, and we were front-end developers doing JavaScript all day long. And it was the beginning of Node.js. That is a technology that for the first time was allowing developers to run JavaScript on the server. So we're like, wow, if only we could have a CMS that is based on JavaScript, so we don't have to switch from JavaScript to PHP every hour. So that was one of the pains. Another one is that it was 2013, so it was the beginning of Node.js frameworks, not Node.js frameworks, but front-end frameworks, I mean, like AngularJS, and that was before React and Vue.js. And all of these frameworks are designed to be connected to an API, put the content and display it their own way. The issue is that traditional CMSs have no API. Of course, you can add an API plugin, but the API is slow, it's not customizable. Again, it's based on PHP. So we decided to build our own tool for us to save a lot of time at the beginning of every project. And so it was a mix between an API framework and a CMS, because it was really easy to build an API, and that's, by the way, where the names comes from. Bootstrap your API, that's where Strapi comes from. And there was an admin panel, so any non-technical person could manage the content or the data. So that's what we've built for us. We started using it for our clients, and we realized that developers, digital agencies were all having the exact same need. So we decided to publish a project on GitHub. That was in October of 2015. And we started having a lot of users who, were looking for similar solutions. And that's really how the story started. We collected feedback from users, we answered GitHub issues, and we started adding more features and improving the product for this user.
Yeah, it makes sense. And like I'm talking about, it is like a three co-founder at Strapi. Can you the backstory? I think you mentioned that you are all student, you are all students in the same university. This is where you meet, or it's like a different university.
Yeah, that was the same university. So that's where we met, and we were working on projects together. So yeah, that's how we knew each other.
Okay, awesome. And the second question that I would like to ask is, what are the things that was most challenging during the time of building an open source headless CMS back then in 2016? So what are the challenges that you are hitting and you are struggling with? Because open source is different than like a closed source or a commercial headless, like a CMS in general. You will have a monetization system already figured out from the end, but open source is different. So what was the challenges building an open source headless CMS?
Yeah, well, I think money was a big component, but for many different reasons. So at first, it was just a side project. So we are not even trying to make money out of this project. We were working as freelancers as a very small digital agency. So we've built a lot of projects for our clients. The main issue we had in the early days is that we thought that by using Strapi for our clients' projects, we would spend at least 50% of our time improving Strapi. The reality is that 90% of our time was dedicated to building custom functionalities for our clients. And so it was kind of a disillusion because we realized that was not sustainable for the long term of the project. We are not spending enough time on the open source project. How can we spend more time on the open source project? Well, first of all, the main thing we needed to do was to end our studies because that was still taking a large portion of our time. And so luckily, our university has been quite flexible. Instead of doing internships in companies, they allowed us to do internships on Strapi specifically. But this also means that we are not paid, so we had to do more freelance work. But anyway, so what we decided to do after our studies was to stop doing freelance work, to stop working as a digital agency, but instead raise money so we could be full-time on the project. Because we could have started monetizing the open source project by adding paid features, by adding a cloud offering, but it was just the three of us. We did not have time to develop all of these additional features. So we thought it would be better to raise money. And I think that was a good choice. So end of 2017, we started contacting investors, but let you imagine that we were 25-year-olds back in the days, and we had no network in the VC ecosystem. People could not do any ref call because we are just students before we tried to raise money. So it was a very difficult round, and when we were talking about the fact that Strapi was an open source company, a lot of investors were like, okay, so it's free, so you'll never make money. And that was very frustrating. And I'm glad that now commercial open source companies like GitLab and MongoDB and all of the others have been very inspiring for the ecosystem, including for VCs. So it was really hard to raise this first one, but we ended up closing it on the 25th of June 2018. It was so difficult that I remember the exact date. And our the money on our bank account was minus $30,000. So it's really not a good situation to be in. But we closed that round, and we've been able to hire a few people and of course to start paying ourselves just a little bit, but still it allowed us to start being full-time on the project. And this has been a game changer for us.
That's interesting. It's really interesting to know like the backstory, because this is some of the behind the scene of running a startup, especially like you mentioned open source. Open source is really hard because like a VC will be like a bit skeptical about giving you fund, because they are thinking about the secret sauce of the startup sometimes is technology, and you are making it open source, so there's not, it's no longer a secret sauce, so everyone can just copy and build the same in just a couple of weeks because you already have everything available. So it will be very hard to be able to convince them to be able to raise fund and to be able to join you on the venture. And you mentioned that currently there is like a more like a startup. You mentioned GitLab and MongoDB. I think there's like a good reference right now to be able to like a use in your like a pitch to be able to raise funds. So it will be very hard to be able to do that back then because there is no like a reference that you can use to be able to get a fund for your open source project, which is really hard. That's good to know. And the thing that you mentioned about like a raising fund for an open source project, it was VC fund or like an angel investor that invest into Strapi, or just it was like just a VC fund?
Yeah, so for the first one in 2018, we raised with business angels mostly. And I think things really changed in 2019 when we raised our first seed round. I mean, our seed round. The round before was a pre-seed round. Yeah. And so when we raised the seed round, we decided to chat with more structured investors, like VCs. And that's when we raised with Axel. So Axel invested in a lot of technical companies, including InfoCell and so on and so on. And so they really understand dev tools, open source, all of these kind of things. And so the round that we raised in 2019 was very different. First of all, I think we wanted to take kind of a revenge on our pre-seed round that was really hard to raise with investors saying that, oh, it's open source, so it's free. No, we wanted to raise with investors who really understand what we build. And we wanted investors to look forward to invest in Strapi instead of Strapi looking for money. So back in the days, we were still not making any revenue. But we raised this seed round within a month. I mean, it took a month to get the term sheet. Of course, there were the legal aspects after this. And we closed an amazing round with Axel and a bunch of angel investors. And 6 months after, Index Ventures preempted our Series A. So it was only 6 months after our seed round, and we're still not making revenue. And they said, okay, we are very interested in the space. We think that headless is the future of CMSs, and we're interested in investing in Strapi. So we raised 3 rounds within 18-20 months. And that was really good for us because we've been able to start 2020 with the beginning of COVID with a lot of money on our bank accounts. And that's when we started making revenue because it's great to build a fantastic community, which is what we've done with the 3 rounds. But then we also wanted to make the business sustainable to avoid having a too strong dependency on investors. And that's when we started with the Enterprise Edition, which is an extension of the open source project.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, that's great. I think this will be a great point to be able to mention for the next question, because the next question will be about monetization. So currently, Strapi have like an open source version, and you will have like a cloud-based version that you can use for like you don't need like to host it yourself. It will be hosted by Strapi. And what was the first version of the commercial license looks like for Strapi?
Yeah, so when we started Strapi, we started with the MIT license, and Strapi is still under the MIT license. But when I say Strapi, it's really the community editions, the open source project. In 2020, we introduced the Enterprise Edition, which is, as mentioned earlier, an extension of the open source project, and this is under a proprietary license. This means that if you're a big bank like JP Morgan, you will probably want to host Strapi on your own servers for data privacy reasons. And so that's something you can do with the open source project, of course. But if you want to extend Strapi with additional collaboration and compliance features, such as single sign-on, audit logs, with your workflows, content history, that's something you can do by subscribing to the Enterprise Edition. So this has been working great, and that's something we've been selling mostly to big enterprises. A couple of years ago, in March 2023, we released Strapi Cloud. Strapi Cloud is a hosting platform for Strapi projects. This means that you can host any Strapi project and we'll take care of everything: security, scalability, networking, and so on and so on. So this is our second business model, and it has been working really, really well. For that specific product, we decided to focus on smaller companies with a self-serve approach where people can just sign up, start using it for free, especially now that we have the free plan on Strapi Cloud. And if they like it, they will end up paying because they need more resources. And we think it's a very good alignment with the Strapi community, because it helps every Strapi user, and every successful Strapi community user will more likely end up on Strapi Cloud. So this has been a really good business model, and it's growing very fast. And we have more than 2,000 customers on that specific product 2 years after the launch.
Interesting. Also, I think you mentioned the Enterprise Edition. I just would like to mention there is like a really like some big startup and like a big company using Strapi, including IBM, Toyota, Walmart, Societe Generale, Bolt.com. So there is a lot of interest in like enterprise using Strapi, which is really great to know. And also one thing that you mentioned a couple of times that I would love to get your thought about is the Strapi community. What is the Strapi community?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And I think for every open source project, it's important to define what the community is. It all starts, there are kind of different levels in terms of community. I think at the very center, there are the core contributors, people who contribute to the core of Strapi, submitting pull requests, posting issues. That's with the core community. That's as close as possible to the code. But the community is so much more than that. There are people who create plugins, for example. There's extensions of Strapi that are listed on the Strapi marketplace. There are more than 200 plugins on the Strapi marketplace. There's people who create these plugins that are definitely part of the community, and they make so much for making Strapi a success, because we believe that Strapi is more than a product, it's more than a project, it's an entire ecosystem. People who also promote Strapi on Reddit, on X, on LinkedIn by saying they love it, these people are part of the community. Partners like digital agencies, technology partners are also part of the community because they really gravitate around the open source project. And so the community is really everyone who can be on Discord, can be creating plugins, building projects for clients. And a couple of weeks ago, we organized StrapiConf. And I think that was a very good example of what the Strapi community is. It was fantastic to meet in person. And as part of these people, there were users, partners, customers, plugin creators. And yeah, that's really what we mean with community.
That's great. And you mentioned Strapi Conf. I think I saw a post from Kaushal Shubari, which is a friend of mine who participates as a speaker in the Strapi Conf. So it was like
she was a speaker.
Yeah, it was like really great to see like all the things that Strapi like have been offering in the conference. And also I would love because I have been using Strapi, I think during COVID, I think 2021, 2022, something like this. I was like using it with the Shopify. It was like for a proof of concept for a product to be able to do some like a headless CMS because I have been using Shopify for the e-commerce part, but there is like something for the content management stuff, so I cannot like use Shopify as a headless CMS for the content management. So I need to figure out another solution to be able to have a content management system, which is, I think I have been using Strapi for that, which has been really great to use. And also I think one of the things that I would like to mention is like a Strapi, one of the first headless and API first CMS, because when I was in the market research to be able to find like a headless CMS solution, it was like Contentful. There's like a couple of other provider, and just would like to know if Strapi was one of the early adopter or like the early mover for the headless and the API first approach rather than just a CMS with providing an API support.
Yeah, just a few words about integrating with Shopify. We just announced the official Strapi Shopify integration, so that should make your life much easier. So we started Strapi in 2015. That's when we published it on GitHub. So yes, Strapi was definitely one of the first CMSs that's headless. And speaking of headless, this did not even exist back in the days. I think the headless CMS term was really coined in 2018, but that was our vision since day one, just giving an admin interface where you can manage content and make this content available through an API. So yes, Strapi was definitely part of the first ones, and I think that definitely contributed to making Strapi today by far the most popular open source headless CMS.
Interesting. And also, because Strapi is one of the early adopters for headless CMS, I think you have been utilizing the movement of the Jamstack. So there's a lot of hype during, I think, the COVID for the Jamstack. So a lot of people using this. How was Strapi utilizing this hype on their end to be able to get more user to be able to use headless, and how was Strapi doing during this time?
Yeah, so Strapi was already flying in terms of growth, and maybe back in the days just not the revenue, but the number of stars on GitHub, the number of downloads, and we went all in on this Jamstack trend, because Jamstack for us was really about putting a word on what we believed in the early days. As mentioned earlier, we were using AngularJS and all of these cool frameworks like Backbone, and then of course React and Vue.js. All of this was before Jamstack frameworks like Gatsby. So when Gatsby arrived, we're like, wow, that's really awesome. So it was, of course, about static generation very much, which is great for some reasons, but has also its limits. And that's why I think Gatsby decreased in popularity, and we're now on things that are much more hybrid. And I think that's for the better. So speaking of this Jamstack trend, we published, for example, an article beginning of 2018 on how to build a blog with Gatsby and Strapi. And we worked with the Gatsby team to get feedback on the article from their team. And they added some pretty good adjustments. And they even agreed on publishing this blog post on their own blog. And it's really one of the items that helped Strapi to really take off beginning of 2018. Because we got a lot of visibility in the Gatsby ecosystem. And then we did quite a bunch of things with Netlify, for example, and Vercel and Next.js. And for example, the founders of both Netlify and Vercel are investors in Strapi. So it's a very small world, and we always try to work together because we can create really strong synergies between our different open source projects and products.
Interesting. That's great to know, because I remember a Strapi and the Jamstack was really popular, and a lot of people have been using Strapi for the headless CMS part. And currently, there is no a Gatsby right now, but it's still Strapi is thriving right now.
Yeah.
That's good. So I think the other question that I would like to ask about currently, I think we are getting closer to what is currently Strapi is. So I think we mentioned the Jamstack, and we are getting into the COVID part. And the COVID part was a lot of people going fully remote and going like online. And Shopify has been growing so fast, and a lot of like a platform that is providing online service has been growing a lot during COVID. How was Strapi thriving during the COVID time?
Yeah. So yeah, it was growing really fast for different reasons. I think COVID really accelerated the digitalizations of companies. Like they had no other choice than building great websites, going all in on e-commerce, all these kind of things. So this has been helpful for us. It was also just after we raised our Series A that COVID started, so we made pretty good announcements with this new fundraising round. So this also increased the visibility of Strapi in the tech ecosystem. And also, we released a ton of improvements in 2020. We also started growing the team significantly. We also became an all-remote company, like anybody else, of course, but we really decided to stay this way, so much so that at the end of the lockdowns, we told the team, you can go back to the office, but no more than 2 days a week. We are doing the exact opposite of every other company, just bringing back people to the office. And the thing is that because we started hiring people in a lot of different countries in 2020, we really kept this full remote international DNA, and nobody was really going back to the office, so we stopped renting the office. We don't have an office anymore. And we have 65 people today who work fully remotely in 12 different countries. So that's how we went through this weird COVID era. And as a CMS vendor, we were not in an industry that was very impacted negatively or positively by COVID itself. We are not in the travel industry, for example. So, of course, some customers were careful about their expenses, but the open source project kept flying, and it was the beginning of our revenue. So we could not really compare between before and during COVID, because we are just starting making revenue. So for us, we've been taking off anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think just a matter of time. I think even if it was COVID or not COVID, I think it was like just a matter of time that Strapi will be making money. I think because you are growing and you are launching a new feature. I think with the COVID, it will just be growing faster because a lot of people are going online and they will be using somehow Strapi as a CMS for their own. Correct me if I'm wrong about this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And you mentioned that you are currently a remote first company after COVID. How is working with the multiple country and the multiple culture at the same team?
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. We have people in very different countries. I think we feel closer to anything that's happening to the world. So we have people in the US, we have people in Canada, we have people in Zambia, we have people in Lebanon, we have people in France, in Germany, UK, Spain, a lot of different countries, Germany, Poland, and so on and so on. So first of all, it's fantastic to have such an international team. We learn so much from each other. It also allows us to be all over the world and to be as close as possible to our users and customers and partners. So that's very helpful. And I think being a hybrid with several offices or one office and some people working remotely but gravitating around the office and not feeling included adds to me the worst of both worlds. So I would recommend being fully in the office or fully remote. We decided to go fully remote. So we all work the same way no matter where we are. So we don't have people who communicate in one way in an office and people who communicate differently just because they work remotely. So that works really, really well. I think we've also learned that the best part of working remotely is to meet in person. So we have an annual team retreat, which was a couple of weeks ago, just after the conference. And it was absolutely fantastic, like every previous year, to spend a few days together, creating stronger connections, just chilling a bit, talking a bit about work, talking about who we are. So that's very important to create stronger connections, to create stronger alignment. And so we meet once a year with the entire team, but we also have a budget for every department to meet together, like the marketing budget, the marketing department, the sales department, the engineering department. So they can meet another time in the year, just as a group, wherever they want. They organize it by themselves. And if necessary, if we feel that it's necessary that we meet because we have important topics to discuss, then we meet, and that's completely fine. And then we go to our respective places, and we're more productive than ever, just because we're fully focused, we don't have commute time, we have our setups, and we just feel better this way.
Yeah, that's true. I couldn't agree more because I have been working in a remote startup, and being meeting someone in person is pretty different than meeting online.
Yeah.
Online is good, but in person it will be totally different because you will be seeing, I would say, the real person, but the person in real life, it's like a different vibe and different chemistry that you will have.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good in a way because we're humans. I think in-person connections are the best. It's why we organized the first in-person StrapiConf. And yeah, there's nothing better than that. But the reality is that talents are everywhere these days, and especially when you build an open source project and you want to start hiring people from the community because they love what you do, they're super motivated, they're great technically speaking, and these people, they are not necessarily in the city where you live, and so you want them to join the team anyway. So what do? Do you hire them remotely, but they feel excluded from the office a few of you work from? Or do you prevent yourself from hiring them? That's a tough decision. So by being all remote, you can hire these people wherever they are, and that's fantastic. And we have very good examples of this. And if they listen to this podcast, they will obviously recognize themselves. And I'm so glad they joined the team because they believe in what we do and how they contribute to this every single day. So these are fantastic stories.
Yeah, that's great. And also one thing that I would like to add to the remote a company culture, because under the remote company, many are running a remote company. You will feel and you can tell that the company is running 24-hour because everyone is in a different time zone. So it's you are constantly shipping, and also it's also great for a support or a client call.
Exactly.
Because I will have a different client with different time zone. So when the one that is closer to the client time zone can take the call, so there is no will be a problem. Yeah, it will be a great thing to add. And also the second question will be about the challenges and the lesson that you learned from building Strapi. I think it's almost 9 years that Strapi exists. So I would love to know all the things, not all the things, but I would say the most important lesson or the challenges that you face and learned during this experience.
Okay, well, I could write a book about this, so I'm going to try to keep this list short. I think we hired maybe too fast. We had the chance to raise a lot of money in 2018, 2019, 2020, and then 2022 with our Series B. I think we hired very fast. The size of the team was doubling every single year. But because we raised so much money before making revenue, I think we burning too much cash. So now we are a very efficient company. But I think it's important to build a sustainable business since the beginning. And so it's important to focus on the business model or business models that you want, and to pick the right one as early to learn and to iterate on it. Another thing I would change is that I would have started with Strapi Cloud as a business model instead of the Enterprise Edition, because the Enterprise Edition is very much for enterprises. And so what happened is that we went up market really, really fast. So we got amazing logos, big deals, but that also took us a lot of our time. And because we are selling these additional features, we quickly derailed the team from the work we were doing with the community. And instead, we focused on creating differentiators for these enterprise customers. So we were focusing on 1% of the Strapi users. And the thing is that the open source community is, first of all, that's really our mission. We really want to build something huge with a lot of people using Strapi. And that's also what's eventually fueling our revenue further down the line, because these free users will eventually become paid customers. So going up market too early is a pretty dangerous game. And that's why when we released Strapi Cloud, we really decided to focus on self-serve, having a lot of customers paying us smaller amounts, but having a lot of them instead of having a very, very few enterprise customers paying very large deals. And the last item I think is maybe giving too much in the open source project. Give a lot of features for free, and that's probably contributed to making Strapi the most popular headless CMS. But I think it's also important to find the right balance to make sure that can keep some features as paid features and sell them. Because the more you give for free, the more you have to go up market to find the very few customers who need the extremely advanced features. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's true. This is like one of the things that is hard about the freemium model is sometimes you will be having a problem if you would like to have this feature free for everyone or like for paid user, because if it's free for the user, it will be hard for them to upgrade to a paid plan, because the value might not be the same way if this paid feature is, if this feature that you are launching on the free plan was on the paid plan. So it will be like always a hard decision. Should I make it free so a lot of people will be using it, or should I make it paid so a lot of people will be justifying to upgrade to a paid plan?
Yeah, exactly. And that's true especially for open source, because if you're building a SaaS product, well, even if you make some features free, you can still put some limits in terms of usage, no matter if it's the number of users, the number of API requests, the number of entries created, no matter what is most relevant for your own product. But with open source, what's open source is free and it's unlimited in terms of usage. That's the case by definition. And so that's really removed the needs for upgrading for the other features. So that's okay. It's part of the tools, and that's the beauty of it. But you just need to be aware that if you give too much for free, it will remove the incentive for people to contribute to your revenue. And you want it's not just to make it's not to make a ton of money, but it's just to make the open source project sustainable.
Yeah, this is one of the things. Yeah, because you need like a money to be able to sustain the product, because you need to pay the bills, and the open source, like make it for free, it will not pay the bills, like for you and for the company to be able to run it. So it does make sense to make some feature paid. The runway for the product will be much longer than you expected, or like than with the free version. And also one of the things that I would love to get your thought about is currently Strapi. I saw in the Strapi conf that you have some new AI feature, and I would love to know what is currently on the table for the new AI feature, because currently we are living in the AI era. So what Strapi is offering in the AI space?
Yeah, sure. So Strapi is used by both developers and marketers, and these two personas are going through a lot of changes with AI. Like the way developers code has completely changed over the past few months. And same thing with marketers. If you think about creating a blog post, translating content, all of these kind of things, they work differently. And what we really share during the presentation at StrapiConf is that the expectations that people have toward these people are changing as well. Companies expect developers to ship faster. Companies expect marketers to publish more content better, faster. And clients also expect digital agencies to build projects faster. And we have no other choice than to embrace this gigantic opportunity that we have at the moment. And we are here to help the Strapi community to do so. So that's why we released Strapi AI at StrapiConf. Strapi AI is not just a product, but it's a paradigm shift. We're really enhancing every existing feature in Strapi thanks to AI. So we are taking this as an opportunity to improve this feature and to infuse AI not everywhere, but everywhere it makes sense. And the first step that we announced at StrapiConf is the AI architect. So it's really, in Strapi you have the content type builder, which allows you to define the content structure. So you can say, I want to manage articles, and I want every article to have a title, some content, and so on and so on. So it's a lot of clicks. So we can streamline this for you. And we can do this with AI. So typically what you do as a developer is that you get the design from Figma, you build a front-end application with Next.js or any other front-end framework. You can use tools like V0 and so on to build that front-end. And that's fantastic. So you get a front-end, to edit the content, you have to go through code, so it's not ideal. But you have all of these components already. And what you typically do as a developer is that you're going to configure the CMS based on everything you've built before. So you're going to say to the CMS, I need the button components, and so on and so on. With this new AI feature, you can just drag and drop your React application into your Strapi project, and we'll build all of the components for you. So we are basically going to scan your front-end application. We're going to detect that you have a button component, that you have a list of articles, and so on and so on. And we'll build the ideal content structure for you. The next step would be to directly connect your project to the CMS to pull the content from your React project directly to the CMS. So the goal is really to make your front-end application editable within one click. That's the first pillar. And we're going to add a lot of other improvements, such as translating content from one local to another, but also to create blog posts, any kind of content, everything that makes sense. So yeah, that's a big chapter for the upcoming quarters.
Interesting. That's good to know. That's great. Yeah. Interesting. And where people can more find about the stuff that you mentioned, especially the because I'm interested about the scanning for the React component, where people can know more about the stuff, and if it's available for the community edition or like it's on a specific plan.
So we opened the waitlist, and anyone can sign up on strapi.io/AI. You can fill in the form, and you will join the waitlist that we are opening to new users. As we speak, we started collecting a ton of very positive feedback, and once we'll feel ready, we'll open this feature in Strapi directly.
Oh, okay, awesome. That's great. So I think I will be leaving the link that you mentioned over the show note if you are listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. If you are listening or watching us from YouTube, you will see that in the video description, so you can check it out. And also you can check out the landing page for Strapi to be able to find all the feature that you would like to use Strapi for. For the next question will be about what is currently coming on the next feature that you would love to have in the Strapi, in the next version of Strapi, like the roadmap for Strapi as a short answer.
Yeah, well, first of all, again, we announced a ton of stuff at StrapiConf, live previews, on-the-fly regulations, the on-page widget API, integrations with Shopify, BigCommerce, and Cloudinary. We also announced the Strapi Cloud free plan, as well as Strapi AI. So this has been a huge amount of work for the team. So right now we're focusing more on quality, improving a lot of detail that we did not have time to spend on because of StrapiConf. So that's really where we're at the moment. But the strategy for the upcoming quarters is really based on 4 pillars. The first one is to unify the front end and the CMS to improve both the editing and the developer experience. The second one is to grow the ecosystem. We talked about contributors before, and the Strapi marketplace where there are 200 plugins listed. We're going to continue working with the community on building that very large ecosystem of plugins and integrations. The third pillar is to shorten time to production, so that's very much around Strapi Cloud. How can we go even faster from creating a project to having the project that's fully deployed online and up and running? And the fourth pillar is AI. So that's how we're going to how we're building the roadmap for the upcoming quarters.
Interesting, that's great. And also the last question that I would love to ask you about. So I think if you are doing a flashback or thinking about the Strapi for the 9 years, what do you think the most satisfying 3 milestone that Strapi hit that you think is worth mentioning?
That's a good question. Honestly, StrapiConf is the biggest one. I mean, that was the 4th StrapiConf, but it was the first that we are doing in person. And meeting the community in person was so powerful. And to me, that this has been my favorite moment within this 10 years. And the rest is, yeah. I don't know if there are specific milestones, but there are 3 things that really motivate me on a daily basis. The first one is to build something for a large number of people. So that's really the community, empowering all of these developers, marketers, digital agencies. The second thing that motivates me is the team. It's awesome to see amazing people joining the team and bringing something that we would have never bought. That's very fascinating. And the third one is more about personal development. I think building a company is such a fantastic way to learn about yourself and to be out of your comfort zone every single day, but to learn and to evolve the person. And that's really what fascinates me as well.
Interesting. So thank you for answering my question. It's really good to know. And this will be the last section of the episode. Can you give the audience where they can find you over social media, and also if you have some resources and online resources, books, podcasts, anything that you would like to mention and to share with the audience so people can know more about you and also can benefit from these resources?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you can find everything about Strapi on strapi.io. That's our website. And even more importantly, there is the open source project that's on github.com/strapi/strapi. It's pretty easy to find. And about myself, you can find me on X under Pierre_Burgy, BURGY, or LinkedIn. Happy to connect. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions.
Awesome. And for the resource part, do you have any resources that you would love to share with us? So for people that would like to start in the tech entrepreneurship, especially as a developer.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question. So where could I start? I think I'm going to mention one thing that's very inspiring to me, which is the GitLab handbook. So you might know GitLab, which is an open source solution to collaborate on code. They have a fantastic handbook where you can learn a ton of stuff about company values, company mission, the way they operate, and so on and so on. We do have a handbook too, but I must give a ton of credit to the GitLab handbook, and I think it's a very good way for anyone to learn about building a company, especially around an open source project.
That's great. Yeah, I'm taking a look at it right now. So I will be leaving all the things that you mentioned, as I mentioned before, in the show note and in the video description of this video. And thank you so much, Pierre, for taking the time to be able to share your story about building Strapi. It was a pleasure hosting you for today's episode.
Thank you so much, Elias. It was a pleasure being with you today.
Thank you.